Aga.
She's very quiet, behaving.
She's a participant today, so she's going to behave only a little bit. She'll continue to behave.
She gets
All
to
right, so we
relax,
are at
relax and enjoy.
exactly what a feeling, huh? So we are at the hour wherever we are, and before we start, I just want to let you know that we are recording this session for whoever wants to view it later on when it's convenient for them. Anybody who has any objection against the recording, please let us know before we hit the record button.
It's okay.
I don't hear anything, so we're good to go, Joe.
Okay, it's recording.
And if we could have our microphone muted for the meanwhile, that would be appreciated.
Always a good idea to have everybody muted unless you need to say something, then you can unmute yourself, okay?
Okay, thank you.
And welcome everybody to our session for today. This is the first of a series, so we are going to be continuing whatever we start today for the next 4 sessions. I start with a little intro by Margaret.
Hi everyone. In Canada, for those of you who are not here, in the last few years, there's been a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and one of the commitments that we have as educators in Canada is to acknowledge the land where we are. So we would like to start by acknowledging that the traditional lands where we live and work. I am in the traditional land of the Anishinaabe, the Cree, the Oji-Cree, Dene, and Dakota people, and the homeland of the Métis Nation in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Rima is in the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the New Credit in Brantford. Chadia is in the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, or Iroquois people, and the Ojibwe and Chippewa people. And May is in the traditional land of the Malahat, Esquimalt, and Saanich peoples on South Vancouver Island.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very little intro about who we are. We are students from Athabasca University doing our doctorate in distance education. My name is Rima, for those who don't know, and I've done a lot of online courses, and I have 3 other colleagues. Shadia, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Hi again. So you saw me last time. Talked about myself. You know me, most of you. Linguistics is my field. Languages and learning and teaching also is my hobby and interest. And right now, the online field is my top priority and a great interest. So thank you for being here.
May?
Yes, hi, May Doran. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Okay. Yes, I'm in the same cohort as Rima and Margaret Shadia in the doctoral program for distance education. And I'm from Vancouver Island. My background for most of my career was in IT projects and a lot of training and instruction in corporate. And so, ergo, my interest in distance education. And I'm pleased to be with you today and share my thoughts and hear yours.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, May, Margaret.
Oh, she's got her mic off.
You're muted, Margaret. Let's go and unmute her from here.
There we go. Hi, everybody. It's nothing like talking to yourself, eh? My name is Margaret Rollick. I'm a registered nurse and nurse practitioner. I teach in the nurse practitioner program at Athabasca University, and I also practice half-time as a clinician in a community health center in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And I have the privilege of being in the cohort with these awesome women, learning more about distance education. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. So what are we going to do today? For today, we have, this is our agenda, which I'm trying to share with you. I hope you can see my screen. So, okay, it seems that I'm sharing the wrong file. So today, what we are going to do is that we are going to go over some introductory scenarios, and then we're going to walk you through a framework that we have developed for transitioning courses online, and we're going to talk about the theory and the application behind it, and then we're going to get engaged in some discussion. So how about we start with a little bit of an activity here. So everybody, if you haven't tried this polling before, you can click on the one that speaks to you. So what was the last meal you had today? Alrighty, let's launch the results and let's see. Only one sitting. It's like an open buffet for you. Alrighty, so you know how to use this thing. Let's move on. I have a scenario for you here, so let's read through it, and you are going to tell me what you think. Mm. Just trying to manage all these screens is becoming a challenge for me. I wish somebody else was sharing. So activity poll number 1, do you agree with Jenna's approach to online teaching? So Jenna's new to online teaching, and her friend is asking her, how will you teach your students online? And she goes like, that's pretty easy. Haven't you heard of Zoom as we're using it right now? I'll lecture my students for 2 to 3 hours, just the same thing I do in class, on Zoom, then tell them to read the whole chapter on their own. I'll share the Zoom recording with them too. Isn't that awesome? Just like teaching in the classroom. So give it a second to think about it, and then let's see how many of you agree with Jenna's approach. If you agree with Jenna's approach, you can click on yes. If you don't agree, you can click on no. And if you're not sure, just click on not sure.
So just to remind you, Jenna's said, I will lecture my students for 2-3 hours on Zoom, then tell them to read the whole chapter on their own. I will share this Zoom recording with them too. Isn't that awesome? Just teaching like in the face-to-face classroom. Yes, no, not sure.
Okay, we ended the poll. We're sharing the results. And here we go. We have 6 of us think it's not a good approach, and we are very interested to know why later on. Okay, let's share the next one. And here
So many
we have Amira. And Amira is pretty good at online teaching. Any advice on how to migrate my course to online learning environment? And Amira gives the best advice. Who wants to read for us what Amira says?
All right.
Yeah, I can read if you want.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Hint. Yes.
Okay. Send your students an email with the overall goal of your curriculum and share with them the link to the entire course material so they could focus on the important sections on their own.
Thank you, Hint.
Alrighty, sounds good. So Amira gave a great advice here because she's such a great person at online learning. So how many of you agree with Amira's advice?
Again, her advice is to
Okay,
send
I'll
an
end the
email.
poll in
Mhm.
2 seconds. Send an email and tell them to read the whole chapter
Overall goal of the
on their
curriculum.
own because you know online learners are pretty
Yeah.
self-directed. They're self-directed, right, Shadia?
Uh-huh.
You think
Very.
they're self-directed? All right, let's launch the results here. Share the results. Let's see.
This is an interesting poll result, right? That we do have a 50%
We have
think it's a
the last
no,
one.
right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Although Amira is quite knowledgeable at what she does, right? So let's see. Let's share the last one with you. And that would be Mr. Williams. I really like Mr. Williams because he's an interesting fella. So Mr. Williams here started teaching online. He's quite professional and he's talking to his class. Who wants to read for us what Mr. Williams is saying in a video to his students? Or in Zoom, actually.
Oh, I can. It's me.
Oh, May.
Okay.
Oops.
Oh, sorry, I moved. Oops, oops, oops.
Today we will do a memory exam. See, my memory's not that good. I couldn't remember what he said. The Word document. Share your screen with me and answer these questions. You have 30 minutes to complete the test. Good luck.
He's giving his students a memory test online. Isn't that awesome? So how many of us agree with Mr. Williams' approach of testing his students online? I have somebody who agrees. That's interesting. Who else agrees? Well, all right. Ready to share? And here we go. Only one person agrees, one person is unsure, and we are going to discuss this later on. So next, we have May, who's going to introduce this framework for us. And just to let you know, we are going to revisit the scenarios once our friends complete their talk today.
So yes, keep that in mind because we're gonna.
Margaret doing the introduction.
Right. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Rima, we have your presenter view visible on the screen at the moment.
Okay, so probably I'm just sharing the wrong screen. Thank you very much, Margaret. Okay, is this better?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay,
So,
thanks.
and I am not muted, so you can hear me. So on February 28th, the question came up in our virtual student lounge of what impact COVID-19 might have on education. Our colleague, Dan Wilton, pointed us to a paper by Lee et al. From 2010 in the Journal of Public Health Management Practices that described a computer simulation looking at the impact of school closure in pandemic. The simulation demonstrated that a minimum of an 8-week closure would be required to have any effect on containment, assuming there was another effective method that could be implemented before the 8 weeks are up, immunization, for example, which we know, unfortunately, is more than 8 weeks away. To set some context, on the day the issue first came up in our student lounge, the situation report from the WHO reported 650 cases of COVID-19 in Italy. The US was reporting 59, and Canada was reporting 11 cases. Yesterday's situation report puts Italy over 110,000 reported cases. The US is above 187,000. Canada has over 9,000 cases. Schools are closed in all provinces in Canada, and as of last week, most US states and the majority of the world. This past Monday, I was teaching medical students in Shantou, China online. They have not been to class for 2 months and counting. When we see what has happened in Italy and the exponential increase in the US, I think it's unlikely students will be back in school before the fall if the global community is going to flatten the curve of infection. As a group, we felt compelled to do something that might be helpful for those of you who are transitioning to online teaching for the first time. So what you see on the screen is how students might experience a course that is adapted to online using the framework, but you will note the arrow that connects the learning outcomes with evaluation. Today, our focus is on the learning outcome column, and over the next 3 sessions, we'll be taking the framework apart to offer some support on how you might implement it. In our PDF version, we have included links on the button boxes to help you with the various steps. From an instructional design perspective, we are using backward design. So next week, we will focus on assessment and evaluation, and the following weeks on content and then application. The model may look simple, but it's informed by education theory and best learning practices tailored to an online environment. May is going to discuss the use of PBL in the online environment when I'm finished with this overview. The background shadowing represents the levels of educator and learner involvement. You can see at the beginning, the educator has the largest shadowing of green behind the learning outcomes. Whereas once you get to evaluation, the learner is deeply involved in the assessment. So initially you, the educator, will present your learning outcomes chunked into clear, measurable, reachable goals. This is helpful as you are planning remotely and your learners can have some early success, so that's a win-win. It can also become easier to identify learners who might need additional support. The time that you would normally spend teaching the whole class in person is traded off to provide a shorter learning cycle, concentrated content, self-directed problem solving, and small group work. The class can meet synchronously using video and audio technology. You can still be very present, spending some upfront time creating a reassuring learning environment, and you might want to do a couple of test runs with the technology before you get going, and you might want to invite students to post a written or a video update of what they've been doing since you were last together. You can present the learning objectives via screen sharing of the learning management system, which Chadia will talk about, or slides. And at this point, you would also break learners up into smaller groups of 3 or 4 to work together, fostering peer support and decreasing social isolation. In this phase, the content is provided. In the content phase, the module content is provided asynchronously. The learners can see what excellence looks like in a skill or concept, and this might be through assigned readings, videos, or demonstrations. There are a variety of online platforms, such as an LMS, that learners can meet and work together to collaborate with their small group. And you can be available at prearranged meeting times to answer questions or by your learner requests. The last part of this phase provides questions for small groups to answer. In the application phase, there are 2 parts. In the first, the class has been given time to digest the learning in the content phase, and then the learners move into practice with support from you as you coach. Synchronously, back in the web conferencing, the small groups or individuals can answer questions posed and discuss the learning with you. So this will create a space to encourage critical thinking and reflection. The next round involves the groups or individuals deciding on practice scenarios to develop the application of learning within a topic. And we have some examples of learner-centric choices under application in the bottom box. The evaluation phase is where the transfer of learning is assessed. A reflective debrief occurs after the application phase, and accomplishments are recognized, even if a student needs to repeat some learning activities. Badges or certificates can be delivered, and the phase concludes with a formative evaluation, if this is a module within a series, or a summative summation ending evaluation. You might also want to include self-assessment or a peer assessment exercise. And I will pass the mic to May.
Okay, can you move me forward, please, Rima? There we go. Okay, so Margaret has highlighted that model, and it is a problem-based model, thoroughly researched for actually over 100 years, starting with Dewey, as being the most effective model for deep learning and learner-centric engagement. There are a number of names. The learning theory behind it is called situational cognition, and PBL comes under many synonyms such as attainment-based, evidence-based, experiential, scenario-based, reality-based, but it has certain correct ingredients. And these are critical. What we're trying to develop is critical thinking, creative, collaborative, lifelong learners. That's the goal for most organizations today who take on employees. And so we need purposeful learner-centric goals, organized and encouraged through visceral, interactive experiences in real-world settings, solving ill-defined problems in reflective small groups. And although this model may be out of reach for transitioning to online for you right at this moment, it is worth knowing where you're headed with it. So our framework does have these elements in a simplified structure. Could you move to the next slide, please, Rima? And there are those ones. So situated learning in real contexts and experiences linked to the application. It builds on knowledge through ill-designed examples that broaden deeper thinking and practice. The teacher role should be to assist the learners in setting goals, to assist the learners in designing and selecting tasks, to assist the learners to facilitate task performance and their learning, to evaluate performance and learning, and to mentor the learning. And the learner's role should be to be an active learner, to be a self-regulated learner, and to be a teacher of one's peers. Could you have the next slide, please? And here are some characteristics and qualities you will see linked to PBL, that it is learner-centric, that it involves as real life a situation as possible in the learning module, that excellence is modeled so they know what they're headed for, and that's done through the content material and trigger material. It's attainment-based, so rather than being norm-based to a standard, it's attainment-based to the task. And it's cross-disciplinary often, which we're still trying to get to, right? And in small groups. So those are the big characteristics of PBL. And I think it's on to Shadia, right? Or Margaret?
I think it's me right now. Yes. So thank you, Rima, for the activities, and Margaret for the great walk through this framework. And yes, please come back to us because we're going to zoom in the following weeks for with each phase for the content, application, and evaluation. For right now, and thanks also May for the PBL. Great information in here, very useful for everybody who's interested to teach online. Right now, I'd like to share with you the third, if you remember the framework, the third culling horizontal, we're talking about the online venues. And this is an example, yes. And yes, so here you got the online venues, and for you to enable the learning, right? All this framework, you need technology to enable. So I would like to share with you one of the LMSs, one of the learning management systems that I picked for you today, which is basically Canvas. Maybe some of you know about it, but I'm going to walk you through some really cool
If
tools
you
and
want to share your
functions.
screen.
Can you go to the next slide first?
Oh, I thought you wanted to share your screen.
Oh,
Okay.
that's all
All
right.
right.
You can keep it.
Yeah,
That's okay. So Canvas, let me
absolutely.
talk a little bit about Canvas. So Canvas is a free and easy to navigate learning management system. It allows for multiple courses and different sections, if also of the same course that if you'd like to have designed. And all outcomes, the content, the application, the assessment, and the communications, like the emails and all this sort of communications can be done in one place in Canvas. It allows for synchronous and asynchronous, both learning, and it has many useful tools, and it allows for formative and summative assessment, and it hooked also to Google Docs for collaboration, so you don't even have to go from one place to another. It also has a grade book, and you can duplicate courses with only one click to save time, and you can import and export. So you do the work once, and then in the following, semesters or the separate courses you just copy that course or duplicate. All right, right now I'm going to share my screen here. So this is a canvas that so this is canvas.instructure.com. I've used this like 5 years ago, I believe, for a demo for some of the international presentations that I've done, and I thought it would be nice to give you an idea of how you can do different courses. So as you can see here in the bar, you have your dashboard. These are the different demo courses. They're not really that populated, but just to show you. You have the calendar, you have inbox, right? So how do you create one of these courses? Very, very easy. You go to this button and then you start a new course. You name the course as you want and then create course, and it's there for you. And then you can view progress. This course is not published. Make sure after you populate, you follow the framework that Margaret talked about it, the design, the backward design, and you do everything related to the framework, and then you publish, right, your course. So here we go to one of the courses. Here that I've created. As you can see, there is a side. These are what you're trying to navigate in here. The setting, I'm going to go to the setting, which is very important because it allows you to give all your details, the course details, whether you have the participants between these dates. You basically you are the one to restrict or to allow anything for viewing, and with different start dates and all the information about it. You have different sections, so you can have more than one section, and if you add this. Navigation, you can prioritize here the way you want it. So I don't know if you want the attendance to move upwards, so you just put it at the top and it's at the top for you. You have different apps, and this is really good because if you want YouTube or if you want so many things in here, as you can see, you can use them for audio, video, for recording, for different things Twitter, as you can see there, Wikipedia, you can use that as well, built in. And there are featured options here you can do on and off for your students. So if we followed our framework that Margaret talked about, you have your outcomes here, which is really cool. I love it because you can do your program outcomes and you can also manage your own rubrics. So you create on rubrics and you add rubrics the way you want it. You could also have your learning outcomes for that particular course, and the same thing, you add and all the information that you have different groups. You can import other files if you have them ready, and then also create other rubrics. The syllabus, you put it in here as well, and you can edit in here. Files, this is very important. I just thought to share with you the academic honesty policy and guidelines, Canvas, familiarization, scavenger hunt, because most of the students, they don't really know how to navigate through a new LMS. So if you create an activity for them at the very beginning. It would be nice. Some tips for them to be successful online learners as well as part of your files, and pretty much any file that you think is important. You create your modules. This would be the content here. Just a few thoughts for you for language learners that I know are with us here. This is an ESP course, but of course this is just not populated, so I have to work on it. Assignments, you can create assignments right away built in here. So you can do quizzes, you can do text enter, a website URL, or a media record, and you can upload a file. It could be a group assignment, a peer review. It could be graded or not graded. You can shuffle things around. You have your own points here if you want it for the percentage. So it goes back to the grade book. Everything's ready for you. You don't have to enter anything manually, which is really cool as well. And you also have a look at the mastery path. So you basically create your own grading system in here. Discussions, which is very important to have in the LMS. Here are some of the discussions, discussion boards about topics or reading or listening or anything that you do. And the students should just do the asynchronous work that we talked about, which is very good for their writing skills and for their also reflection and critical thinking. Conferences also, it allows for conferences. So would be the synchronous sessions. So it's built in here. You can do the time, you can enable the recording, and you can update everything that you want, and you have connect with your students while they're working on a task or a group work or anything. Other stuff for collaboration here, which is I really love, which is building Google Documents. So you can pretty much authorize Google Drive access, and students would work on, like we have here, we work together on Google Document for this presentation, the four of us, uh, and it's built in, so you don't have to go anywhere else. You manage your people, of course. All your students are in here. You can add pages. You have a separate button for quizzes, so if you want to add a quiz, other than the other assessment, you can do formative assessment with the apps that I showed you earlier. If you remember the other session, we talked about virtual tours, we talked about wikis. There are wikis over there, websites, projects. You just do the formative assessment. Here you can do some of the summative assessment, or also formative assessment in the not individual work, not group work, as the grades. So it will just very easy. You put your questions, the type of questions, multiple times or only one time. You limit the time, or you for grades or for not. You have different questions here, and you save, and it's published for you. You can link right here to the right to different pages. So you can add files, you can add images as you wish. And of course, your attendance. For those who have used Blackboard, this is very similar to Blackboard, but Blackboard is for money, and this is for free. That's why we wanted to share something with everybody for free. As you can see here, this is a great book, automatically built in for all your students. So you can unmark them all, you can mark them all present, and the grades here as well, as I mentioned earlier, so everything in one place. And for those who are interested in research, this is really cool because this is your course analytics. So you can have a lot of data for research about this too. Another cool thing is that you have the calendar. So for your own personal calendar, as you can see on the right, or for the different courses and the sections that you have. This is the haha that we just created. That's funny. And then you have the inbox. So you don't have to be using your personal email or other emails, but all the communications are in here. So you select the course that you want to email, you select the people. You have to manually put your own students' emails though in the people section. and then you can send all students or one by one. So everything is in one place. Commons, this is built in, and then Canvas, this is other people sharing. You can make your own Canvas courses for everybody, or you can just have them private. I had mine private. You can export and import from these as well if you find some really useful thing. And what else? Yes, from the apps that I mentioned earlier for your content, there are OER app, the open educational resources. So again, remember what we talked about last time, and you can simply, use those apps built in within the Canvas also to support your content. That's it. I hope you like it and you find it useful. All right, I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much, Shadia. That's helpful. And May, do you want to share something?
I just have a couple of pics here on a slide, and then I'll share my screen. So this is just a brief on Google Drive. It's a great resource if you're not into LMSs yet, learning management systems, and it does connect to learning management systems. So even if you start with this, you can connect it later on to something more sophisticated without losing anything. I have an example here where not sure if you knew, but you can actually connect. I don't have it circled anymore. Can you circle the Google Drive icon at the bottom, Rima, of that email? I did have it, but it's not there anymore. But you can, when you're writing your email, you can click the Google Drive icon at the bottom, and the linked, yeah, thank you. You click that, and then you can go get a document and hook it into this and send it to people, so they don't get a great gobbledygook link. They can actually get the name of the document. Okay, can I have the next slide, please? No. Okay, so you must have gone past one. All right, I'll share my screen now. Okay. All right, so this is what it looks like on the inside. If you haven't seen it before, but it's very much like File Explorer. And here's the document that was shared, which is our slideshow. And you can share live with people. So you can be working on the document at the same time as another team member. And so I'm just show that here. So I've got this document, and I'm logged in, if you see in the top right corner, as May. And so when I type something, you can see it. But when I switch to the other person who's working on it, that's not coming up. Okay, it's not sharing. But you can see their names above the cell. You can actually see who's there. It is. There's my name. And then if the other person is working on it, you'll see their name. So you can actually share, you can delete each other's cell contents or Word documents at any time as you're working with it. But it's a great way to collaborate. And then coming back to the only other thing that you might need to know besides just basic file folders is sometimes someone will share files with you and you can't find them in your drive. It's because you need to go to the shared with me section. Just those two things. And so that's it on Google Drive. Very easy to use. Back to you.
I think that's awesome. And going back to the scenarios that we just had a little bit fun working on at the beginning, and we are going to open the floor for a free discussion right now to to discuss why we thought that these were the best approaches or why we thought these were not the best approaches based on what we have heard from Margaret, Chadia, and May. And probably if somebody has a different opinion, you can try and convince them. So let's look at Jenna's approach. And the whole discussion about Jenna should not last more than 2 minutes probably, so that we can discuss Mr. Williams and the advice that Amira gave. So let's look at Jenna and let's discuss why you thought this was the best approach, why you thought this was not the best approach, why you're not sure, and if you can give us some evidence from what you have heard right now, and discuss it with the ladies. Just grab your microphone and talk, or just write in the chat box if you're more comfortable doing that.
The floor is yours. Come on, use your mics.
Can I start if no one else?
Sure.
Sure.
Yes, please.
Sure.
Go ahead, Randa.
So this is Randa, and my answer to this one, I didn't really like the way Jana was going to, or she's planning to deliver her lessons, because first of all, if I refer back to your the information you gave us, no outcomes were shared with the students. That's the first thing I'm thinking of. Plus, if I give my students like a lecture of 2 and 3 hours, would they really watch 2 to 3 hours of a video with the limiting, like on Facebook is maximum 5 minutes, YouTube like up to 3 minutes people watch, and then they have to read the whole chapter. How would I make sure that my students watched and read the chapter? So there's no assessment or evaluation at all. So I don't know how's Jenna planning to do that, because it's not from the scenario. So yeah, this is what I was thinking of.
Absolutely, Randa. So you talked about it's too long, no outcomes, no engagement, and no assessment. Is there anybody else that would like to add something to this? Kamal?
Yes, this is Kamal from Casablanca. Hello, everyone. It's interesting. Where's the control? If you give everything up to the students to digest and analyze and do it themselves, where's the lecturer or the teacher's control here? So we need to have a control of the material and make sure that they go through all our material that we are sending them. That's one thing. Number two, in this digital age, who would have all the time to go over 3 or 4 hours of material? Otherwise, they would just go to encyclopedias and YouTube on themselves and just learn in their own way. So the word that I'm underlining here is control. So I need to control what my client or what my students are studying, and to check their progress. So if I jump in to give them the outcomes from the get-go, it would be difficult to go through the way they have been progressing. That's my point.
Great. Thank you, Kamal. Rima, do we have more time for others? Hind, would you like to say something?
Of course, only one more, but of course, I would definitely.
Hello?
Am I losing? Rima, you froze. Hind,
Hello?
would you? Yeah. Yes. Go ahead, Hind. We froze.
Yeah, I think yeah, I'm against.
No, Hind is.
Yeah, so I continue?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I'm against this view because there are no learning outcomes, and it's supposed to be in small chunks. So if we ask them to read the entire chapter on their own, there's no guarantee that they're not good, that they're going to do that anyways, and it's supposed to be in small chunks, and there's no evaluation at the end. So yeah, and it's not monitored because it's online. It's not like it's in an actual classroom. So I think it wouldn't be a good idea.
Thank you, Hind. Perfect. Yes. So chunking, you added the chunking idea. That's perfect. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank
I'm
you.
just interested to hear later on, when everybody's done, a professional who is also our professor, Dr. Aga,
All right,
if
we're
she wants
waiting.
to add something, but we'll wait until
All right.
everything is being said and done. So let's look at Amira's advice. And Amira, she's really proficient in online learning. So what do you think of her advice? How many of you agree? And let's discuss.
Godwin, did you want to say something earlier, or
Yeah,
do you want to say something about
yeah.
Amira right now?
Oh, I just come back to Amira.
Okay.
Yeah, but I just wanted to add something that at least if it goes back to the Jenna, it will not really sound as a problem-solving issue rather than just pumping things to a student and leaving them aside because they're just doing by their own. Here, a lot of 3 hours to long lecturing them and just leaving them alone. Although I like the approach sincerely because this is a new technology to Tanzania and I'm just learning a lot. Yeah,
We're very glad that you're here with us. All right.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So anybody who wants to take the mic for Amira?
I can do that.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Hey, Amira. I heard you're pretty good at online teaching. Any advice on how to migrate this course to the online learning environment? Then Amira says, send your students an email with the overall goal of your curriculum and share with them the link to the entire course material so that they can focus on the important sections on their own.
So what do you think about this hint and the others?
Well, I think that just it's similar to the previous one where things are supposed to be in chunks. The good thing about it is that the goals were shared, right? Sharing the goals, that's a really important point, but not just, it has to be monitored and divided into chunks, and there needs to be follow-up and assessment. So I don't think it's a good approach.
Okay. Any other takers?
Oh.
All right, come in.
I believe this is just a part of the whole blended learning system. This is just self-study based. So I can send them some material to read and focus on some stuff, but it should be part of the whole blended learning system, not just the whole of it. That's my idea.
So you're trying to say that it's okay for learners to be working independently, but this is only part of their learning journey.
For my background, I've been just working with adults over the past 7 years. So working with adults, this is what I do basically, just working on the LMS platform system, give them some material to work on, focus on, and this should be followed up by a face-to-face, one-to-one, it's either online or in their offices, to make sure that they got a good grasp of what I've sent them.
All right, thank you. Come in now, Mr. Williams. What do you think of Mr. Williams' approach for testing the students online? So we're talking about assessment here.
I can comment here too.
Yes, please.
So
sure.
I think as a teacher, it would be really crazy for me to, if I have 30 students, to observe the 30 students at the same time. So that's the first thing that popped to my mind when I saw Mr. Williams' plan, because I know there are so many tools, online tools, that enable teachers, like you can give a memory test without setting a specific time for everyone. So I really like it, obviously.
Okay. What others think? Any other takers in here?
Okay, so probably we can pass the microphone to Dr. Aga, and Dr. Aga, as a professional online professor, what are the advice that you would give those three case studies, Jenna and Amira and Mr. Williams? Is there a way for them to improve their online teaching here?
Yeah, they should listen to our webinars.
That's a good one.
This is hilarious.
Okay. It's interesting because starting from the first one, and I promise to make it brief because I have already 5 pages of notes and they're going to go somewhere else. But yeah, starting with the first one and across the 3 scenarios, the first question I asked myself before I, selected yes, no, is what do I know about these students, right? I actually don't have a very good understanding of the actual learning context here, who the students are they adults, are they language learners, are they trying to acquire skills, are they graduate students who are already, let's say, in terms of their preparedness to learn online, they are capable of reading for 3 hours and it actually does work for them, right? So definitely asking myself that question, who are we working with? And I really like some of the, not some, all of the answers. Every single thing that you mentioned here makes some sense, but it is contingent on your environment, right? I can think of situations where 3 hours of reading is not enough for people. Okay, I want more. So it really all depends. Now, from the comments that I heard, a couple of things struck me, so I wanted to maybe share my perspective. For example, chunking is a very popular, chunking content, and chunking even everything. Has been a very popular approach, but after observing it for many years, right, I started asking people to be a little bit more cautious about promoting chunking as panacea in every single situation, because it could equal to fragmenting learning in a way that is not good for learning, right? So very important to remember that chunking is not always the way to go. I know there are claims that our brain works differently than 10 years ago, 20 years ago, because of all the technology that's around us. And yeah, we don't evolve that quick as the human species, right? So our brain is really not all that different from the brain of our grandparents. It's our brain habits, it's our mental habits that we've developed that are different. So the more chunking we do nowadays, maybe the more distracted our brain is and the least capable of paying attention we are. Just wanted to throw it out there. So maybe, there is absolutely a place for well done chunking and learning in shorter learning episodes. But when you get to the level where some of you are, hey, you can stay in front of this computer, or not maybe computer, piece of paper and a book for 5 hours, and it's going to be good 5 hours if you're smart about what you're doing. So wanted to throw it there. Okay, and it goes for language learners. We have lots of language teachers here as well, right? Actually, behavioristic approaches are sometimes really, really good for language learners, but not always, right? Memorization is good for language learners, but not always. But it's necessary, right? So you really have to always ask yourself, what is it that they are doing right now? It is a part of a larger learning event, but this episode might be just memorizing, right? Yeah, I really liked what Kamal said about blended learning, right? Again, it's this whole scenario of what we're looking at here. If that reading for 2 hours is part of something really well planned overall, maybe it's going to work. I don't know. But okay, and the final, I promise not to be too long, right? But I do have these comments here. So yeah, so what are you teaching? Who are you working with? And what is it that you are assessing? Even in the case of Mr. Williams, right? What is he assessing, right? That's the first question.
He's assessing, for me, he's assessing language.
Ah.
He's just giving them a vocabulary quiz.
A vocabulary quiz. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I was talking about Mr. Williams. I was like, I want to test their vocab. And Margaret, I know we need to make this quick so that we can have the 15% solution. But is this the best approach? Just ask them to write on Word while he's watching their screens, for example, or
It's a waste of his time to start with.
absolutely right.
right?
That's not a smart thing to do as an
Yeah.
educator.
Yeah.
But this is something that promise we are going to talk about during the assessment session. So stay tuned and come back. Margaret, the microphone is yours.
Thank you.
Okay, so I will unmute, and I've just added a link in the chat box to a website called Liberating Structures, and they have all kinds of fantastic resources for small group facilitation that that I've used in different contexts, and I wanted to do one with you today. And it's called the 15% Solutions. And I really like using this at the end of sessions because it gives us an opportunity to think about how we might take what power and autonomy we have in what can be overwhelming situations, where we have can find a little bit of discretion and freedom to act. So I ask you, what can you do without more resources or authority? For us, it was developing this work. Our goal was to be helpful, and we completed the work as an act of service to the education community. And we had no idea we'd end up here talking today to you, which has been super awesome. So it doesn't have to be a big thing. For example, you know, it might be really helpful to curate a list of websites that you can share with colleagues about teaching online. So I would invite you to take a minute to think about what you could do given the time and the resources that you have to move your online teaching practice forward a little. And I'd invite you to use the chat box.
Mm-hmm.
Or we could have mics as well if you'd like to discuss. Oh, I see Rima added a comment that she could share links with her colleagues. Thanks, Rima. Any other thoughts from anyone? Find some interesting projects you could do with students to show their learning. That's great, May. Thanks. The question is, given the challenges that we face in education, where do you have the discretion and freedom to act? What can you do without more resources or authority? So what is one small thing you can do in the context of the environment that we're in to support others or support your own practice in education? And Chadia mentioned she could have a conversation to discuss new things that I learned or things that are helpful. Invite friends to these webinars, yes. Kamal, thank you. Brainstorm with colleagues to benchmark. That's a great idea.
I think, Kamal, you've done something, right? Like sessions on Facebook to discuss different topics, if I'm not wrong.
Nice. And I think, Hind, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this is a great opportunity for educators to learn about, you know, using online platforms and sharing ideas and like we're actually forced to do this. So it's an actual, you know, free courses you find.
Excuse me, Shadia, I missed the
webinars
question.
everywhere you know, really great webinars like this one, for example. You get free training, and you get, you know, the, you know, best links and applications and ways to engage your students in the class. So I think it's a great opportunity for people to learn and more about online teaching and learning.
Hey, thanks. And Godwin, I see you wrote, have some discussion with students about online resources. That's excellent. And any other, involve learners with PBL or IBL? Yes. Another excellent one. Okay, we've had lots of great ideas of small things we can do and take away with us today. And I will pass the mic back to Rima to end the session. And thanks everybody for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time that you took to join us today. But remember, this is just an intro, and we are going to take a dive in the details in the next in the next 3 sessions every Friday, 2 o'clock Toronto time. Whatever is the time that you joined us today is going to be the same time. And please, a part of your 15%, probably a 1% of your 15%, is to help others come and join us so that we can learn from their experience and expertise and share ideas together and build on each other's knowledge. Anything else Shadia, May, and Margaret, Dr. Aga would like to add?
Well, thank you. I'd like to add to thank Margaret and May for joining us. It's always great to have them on board, and very pleased to see many of you come back to us. That's really good, and we hope to see you all as well in the coming sessions and the new ones as well to join us. And please, if you bring one more person, then we're all doing something good for the greater good, right? So hope to see you next week. Thank you.
And
Thank
then,
you so
yeah,
much,
absolutely. It's so important for
everyone.
us. I was
Yes,
thinking
Dr.
it's so
Aga.
important for us to have that community. And I'm so happy. Thank you, ladies, for putting this together. I know how wonderful you are. And this is yet another demonstration of that. But also, you know, it's so nice to be seeing your communities and your colleagues from different parts of the world to be coming to this session and, you know, and sharing their perspective on things. So this is such a great experience. And it's also like, you know, just connecting with all of you during this somewhat challenging time, right? Isn't it important? So never mind talking education. Education is in everything and learning is in everything you do. But just being here with you, thank you so very much. Really great.
Thank you also for me.
Let's see you next Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Goodbye, everyone.